U.S. President Donald Trump says he is terminating trade negotiations with Canada following new anti-tariff ads from the Ontario government that feature the voice of former U.S. President Ronald Reagan. Let's get more insight on this from Dan Kelly, President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Dan, thanks very much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
Your thoughts on Trump saying he's terminating talks right now over those ads. Where do you think they stand?
Look, it's hard to get an accurate read. Of course, he's done this before. In June, trade talks ended as a result of the digital services tax, and then we were able to get it back on. So, look, these are negotiation tactics with a president that is very willing to take to the public airwaves and take big changes in direction. I think the important thing is, while we have to take this super seriously, we can't press the panic button, and I suspect from a Canadian end, we're going to continue to push towards a deal.
Is this a bit of Ford being the bad cop and Carney being the good cop as they try to work a deal with Trump?
I think there is something to that. At the same time, we haven't been super successful as a country in pushing back with more aggressive tactics, adding more retaliatory tariffs of our own. That has not been proven in Canada's case or in the case of any other country to be a super successful pathway towards a deal. But we've got to find some balance here. Obviously, I think what the Ontario government was putting out was absolutely accurate in tone, and we shouldn't be afraid of sharing that with our American friends. At the same time, at this very moment, it is disappointing that we're not closer to a deal. Now, would I be surprised if when the meetings start in Asia next week, if there is a deal, in fact, that is landed? I wouldn't be, because we've just seen these things go back and forth so many times with this very unusual president.
And with the APEC and ASEAN summits coming up, could you see the possibility of anything coming out of talks with China? I know there was talk that Carney was pushing for a side meeting with Xi Jinping.
Yeah. Look, I think that would be the most welcome news if we can make progress on both fronts. It has gone, I think, underreported that the trade deal with China, that the trade disruption with China, its impact is just massive on huge swaths of the Canadian economy. I was just out in Saskatchewan, and that was the first thing that anyone wanted to talk about was the tariffs on canola. So we do need to make progress on both fronts, and I'm hoping that we will make progress in the summits in Asia next week. But yeah, there's going to be a few more twists and turns, I'm certain, before any of this is over. I think from a small business perspective in particular, it is the steel and aluminum tariffs right now that are causing the most anxiety on the part of business owners. And if there is a pathway to get a deal on that I think would be of massive relief to many.
And I just want to go back to the summits for Asia. Do you see any other opportunities there or emerging for Canada and Canadian businesses?
Absolutely. Look, I agree with the Prime Minister's goal of trying to increase our tariffs increase our trade outside of the U.S. To provide more diversification. And Asia is a terrific market for Canada, especially if we can get some of these major infrastructure projects, particularly for energy products, off the ground. But those things need to come in concert. It's not just good enough to sign trade deals with emerging partners. We need to make sure that we can deliver on that by putting in place the policy changes domestically. And I'm afraid that there are still some impediments to doing that we need to make sure that the Canadian government takes as seriously as it is negotiating deals.
And what are some of those impediments?
Well, right now it is, of course, British Columbia's challenge in approving any kind of energy project, and it seems that the federal government is sitting more as a bystander in that situation. While I know we may have limited tools, we do need to make sure that the national government thinks about the national economy, and allowing one province to block any progress on this would be a mistake.
And just your members, have they started to adjust to the tariffs and found ways to work with them, I guess is the word I want. I don't know if that's the best word for it, but have they found ways to deal with them?
Yeah, look, about half of small businesses that have been tariff affected, either as importers or exporters, have worked to diversify their markets. We've seen some increase in interprovincial trade among Canadian small businesses, which is really welcome and comes alongside the measures that provinces are taking to lower some of the interprovincial trade barriers. Also, Canadian small businesses are, like many others, looking at markets around the world, using our existing trade agreements in a bigger way. But that's not going to replace the size and scope of the U.S. market. We need to make sure that we have fair and effective trade with the U.S. and with China, because these are two very dominant players, and we have to do all of these things at the same time. The pressure on small businesses is massive right now, and tariffs are a big chunk of that. Just the de minimis issue alone, where the U.S. Eliminated the ability for U.S. consumers to buy from overseas and have it shipped into the U.S. With up to $800 tariff and duty and tax free. That change alone has affected a third of small businesses. It's a big one, and I'm
Okay.
not seeing any progress on that.
Okay, Dan, we have to end it there, but thank you very much for joining us.
Anytime at all.
Dan Kelly, President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business.